welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 239 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 13 of A Feast for Crows, that is, The Soiled Knight.
I'm still holding out for it to be Sir Dantas alive and well.
And to be clear, that's knight with a K, not...
That's good distinction. Well, as you probably know by now, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out our show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing all right. I'm a little bit irked by multiple things this morning, neither of which having to do with the very unusual time that we're recording this episode.
Yes, it is a very strange time to record an episode. And as a result, I have got contractors working on my house, so I apologise in advance for any background noise that the mic picks up. Yes. It is a racket here.
We will try to mitigate it in post, but we can only do so much.
Weirdly, my dogs are not reacting to these guys. They're working on the outside of the house. Normally that is absolute trigger for my dogs, but they are completely blasé about this. To the point where I almost texted Carson earlier to say, have you drugged the dogs?
That's a possibility.
Yeah, there's something a bit suspicious about just how relaxed the dogs are.
Right. Well, so my morning started off with Stacy getting up to go to the gym, which is fine. Good for her. Go get your exercise, all that kind of stuff. Pre 6 a.m. And that's fine. That didn't really bother me. What bothered me was seconds after she left, the dog got out of bed and needed to go outside. So, which fully required me to get out of bed, traipse down the stairs, let the dog out, wait for the dog to come back in, give the dog a treat, and then try and go back up to bed, which was fruitless at that point. So, unfortunately, I've been up since 6 a.m. as well, and I didn't even get the benefit of going to the gym for it. So, such is life, I guess.
Mm. Yes, that's life with a dog. I just learned today that my boss, his wife got them a puppy.
Oh, wow.
But she works like 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the office every day. So he said, she got me a puppy and I didn't want one.
Exactly. That's exactly how that went. The other thing that's, this one really had my blood boiling. That one was just kind of annoying because I didn't have to be up that early, and I was, for no real benefit to myself. The other one, so we had decided, because, Molly is Molly, and she got a really fantastic scholarship to the college that she'll be attending this fall. We thought we would reward her by buying a brand new laptop for her. Her laptop's many years old now. It's actually hand-me-down from Ethan. And so I found, they don't endorse us, so I'm not going to use the product name, but it's a computer company that's named after a fruit. And
okay.
I found this a really good deal on
we say their name almost every episode.
I know we do, don't we? And so I found a really good deal on the shopping website that's named after a river. Probably could put that one together.
Yes, got it.
Yes, there you go.
Took me a minute.
Yes. And so I spotted it 10 days ago or so. And I was going to buy it, and I told Stacy, and she was like, yeah, it's a great deal. And she said, wait, I have some points for at work. You know how, some companies you get rewarded points for doing things, and you can use that to purchase things on a website. So she had some points, and she's like, I can buy $150 worth of gift cards that will help offset the cost. And I was like,
Lovely.
Oh, great. But the problem is they actually mail you physical gift cards. So we had to wait like a week and a half, probably close to 2 weeks for these gift cards to finally show up in the mail. And the $50 one showed up the day before. The $100 one showed up, which was this morning. So finally had them both. And so I activated them. I put them on the shopping website, the river named shopping website.
Yes.
And, added it to my gift card amount and all that. Went to the page where the computer was, And since yesterday, it had gone up $100. And I was so annoyed. I was furious. I was like, I'd been watching this for 2 weeks and it had been at the previous price.
So let me get this straight. The gift card was for the River website.
No, it was
Oh,
it was like a generic gift card that I bought gift card credit on the River website.
right. But hear me out. The River website knew that you were getting a $100 gift card in the mail.
No, it was just it had nothing to do with the River shopping website. It was a generic gift card
see.
that was mailed to us by a third party, whoever it is that her company uses.
And you could have used it on any website, basically.
Yes.
Yeah,
I just bought $150 worth of gift card credit on this website.
Because I was getting suspicious there that they were like, oh, it's okay. He's getting that. Time to jack up the price of what's in his cart.
I wonder if they saw how many times I checked on that without making a purchase. Just checked on that page to check the price. And then suddenly this morning it went up $100 and steam could have come out my ears if I'd been looking in the mirror as possible.
They say that happens with flights, yeah? If you keep looking at the same flight, it drives the price up for you. But
really?
I've
often
heard that.
Wondered. Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not sure how much sense it makes, other than the fact that you're getting desperate, I suppose, if you keep searching for the same flight.
Right. Now, you could be saying, this is too expensive. I'm going to see
Yes,
if it
I'm
goes
going to
down.
keep looking until it gets cheaper, yeah.
Yes. Anyway, so great timing. Now, I mean, she doesn't graduate for like about a month. So now I'm just going to sit and wait. Let's see if it comes back down.
Oh, brinksmanship. Once they learn of that $50 gift card, you know which way it's going.
Oh, well, such is life. But boy, did that
Yeah,
infuriated me.
That would get me too. So Rob had a good story from the family call. I told you they're always pitching, but this was worthwhile.
Okay,
so
let's hear
it. Where his property is in Normandy, there's a local music school which is quite good and attracts students from all over Europe. And he had a group of students coming to the music school who were going to stay at his property. They were from Italy, and they arrived, but they didn't arrive till like midnight, so they were all sort of exhausted and they just sort of flopped into into the place where they were staying.
Right.
As I've said before, it's a series of self-contained units.
Yes.
So they went to their unit, they all went to bed, and they just collapsed. The proprietor of the music school came over the next morning, first thing, to sort of welcome them, and she brought gifts for them. Not gifts as in like, things, mementos, but practical things like breakfast cereal and toilet roll, and some of the things my brother provides, like toilet roll, he provides, but she was just making sure they had all the sort of basic essentials that they needed to get going.
Very nice of
her. Yeah, it was nice of her. What transpired though was that she didn't know precisely which properties the students were staying in, and she marched in on a French family who were sleeping. This particular property has 2 bedrooms and then a fold-out couch in the main room, and it was all occupied. There were 6 people staying there, so there were 2 in each bedroom and 2 on the fold-out couch. And so she walked through where these people were sleeping, put 3 toilet rolls in their bathroom, and walked out again. My brother saw her coming out.
The toilet paper
like,
fairy.
What the exactly? And I just love the idea that she spoke in French to the French person who was sleeping in the bed, and I'm like, well, these Italians have got really good French, My brother was like, please don't do that.
Please knock first.
Yeah. Please check on who you should be delivering toilet roll to.
Oh, well.
All right, well, let's get down to business. How did we leave the Soiled Knight? Well, the Soiled Knight is none other than... I built that up for disappointment, because you're all going to go, who?
Dantas Hollard.
No, it's not Dantas Hollard, sorry. Who's still dead. Pretty sure he's still dead.
Still dead.
But again, the veil is two-way with Thoros of Myr in the picture.
True.
The Soil Knight is Sir Arys Oakheart of the Kingsguard. You may not remember knowing him, but he was the Kingsguard member that was assigned to protect Myrcella Baratheon. Almost called her Lannister then. In Dawn. If you remember, Doran Martell's personal bodyguard, Hotar, weighed him up for what Hotar saw as their inevitable fight. But that's all we got really on Arys. We don't know much more. I will say that with that white cloak, he's probably a bit warm down there in Dawn.
Yep, there's a good likelihood if he's willing, if he's brave enough to wear it.
That's a good point. We'll find out more. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
Okay. Well, Sir Arys Oakheart walks through the evening light in the Shadow City outside of Sunspear. He's dressed as a local, which would have offended his father. The Oakharts of the Reach were ancient foes with the Dornish. The tapestries at Old Oak glorified the slaughter of the Dornish. He wears a hood to hide his features. These are dangerous times to be an outsider in Dorne. Since Oberyn Martell's death, he's seen the anger in the citizens, which has only been partially squashed by the arrest of Oberyn Martell's bastard daughters, also known as the Sand Snakes.
Arys is headed to see a woman. He must make her understand that as a Kingsguard, he cannot take their relationship further. He shudders at the sight of a pretty pillow girl and thinks that men are betrayed by their bodies. He smells snakes being fried. He doesn't like the food, but Princess Myrcella loves it. He'd left her playing Sivas with Trystane Martell. The two children love the game, but Oakheart hates it. However, he notes that his little princess wins more often than not.
Visually, the two are like Cersei and Robert, but Arys hopes she finds more happiness than her mother did. He's uneasy about leaving her, but she's guarded by battle-hardened Lannister men and Trystane's bodyguard, Sir Gascoigne of the Greenblood. He reassures himself that she's safe and they'll be gone from here soon. He thinks back on a pointed conversation with Prince Doran. The prince overtly declared Myrcella safe, while reminding Oakheart of the uphill struggle to keep her that way in the current climate.
Arys says that only a beast would hurt a child, but Doran reminds him of the fate of his niece, Rhaenys Targaryen. Doran wants to return to the Water Gardens. Myrcella and Arys will come too. Nicer and safer there. It all sounds good, but then why did Martell demand that Oakheart not inform King's Landing of this move? He arrives at the room he's looking for to find Princess Arianne, daughter of Doran, wearing nothing but a snake coiled around her wrist. The knight's resolve dissolves.
Resolve dissolves. His plan to end things with Arianne becomes a fleeting memory. Before he knows it, she's in his arms, and things only get hotter and heavier from there. When the passion ends, he's momentarily content to die now and be happy. But alas, death does not come. Instead, it's an overwhelming shame over his betrayal of his Kingsguard vow that he's faced with.
Did you ever see the movie The Truman Show?
Yes.
You remember whenever there was an intimate scene, sort of the curtains would billow in front of the camera? That's kind of what we just did there.
Right. It is quite a long description. Very detailed.
It was, rather. Yes. Kind of thing we wouldn't read out on the podcast.
No. I'd blush way too much.
Oakheart rises to dress and leave, but Arianne protests and tempts him with future pleasures, causing him to halt his departure. She accuses him of leaving for another woman. He says that his mistress is his duty. His place is at the palace. Arianne knows he means the other princess, Myrcella. She says she's just a child. He needs a woman. He clarifies that he loves Myrcella as a daughter.
Arianne wonders where the man who claimed to want to spend the rest of his life with her went. He admits that he was drunk when he said that. Drunk on her. He's not been with another woman since he took the white. He fears for both their honor. Arianne scoffs. If they were discovered, men would find him fortunate, and her father would do what he does best. Nothing.
Arys says he swore a vow. Arianne retorts that the vow was to not father children nor wed. She can promise him neither is a worry with her, and besides, does he think he's the only Kingsguard to have broken his vow? Arys knows he's not. He thinks of his sworn brothers Boris Blunt and Preston Greenfield, as well as historical Kingsguard brothers, all of whom were known to have bedded women.
Arianne surprises him by saying that her great-uncle, the renowned Kingsguard brother Lewin Martell, had a paramour. Arianne sums up her point by saying that it's not their love that dishonors him. It's the awful people he's served and those he calls brothers that's the dishonor. He agrees that Joffrey was terrible, but Tommen is not his brother.
Nor is he his sister, Arianne says. Again, Arys cannot disagree. She's smarter, braver, more confident, and more polished than her little brother. But a son's claim comes first. Arianne wants to know why that is, but Arys has no response. Arianne asks if he knows why her father is taking Myrcella to the Water Gardens. Arys assumes it's to keep her safe, but Arianne says it's to keep her from those who wish to crown her. The Water Gardens will basically be a nice prison.
Arys cuts to the chase. What do you want from me? She wants him to do his duty. Protect the princess bodily and protect her rights. Put a crown upon Myrcella's head. Arys argues that his vow is to King Tommen and that he'll be a good king. Arianne says Myrcella will be better and that Myrcella loves her brother. She won't let any harm come to him. He'll be a great lord of either Casterly Rock or Storm's End.
Then she adds the sweetener to the plan. She embraces Arys and tells him that Myrcella will be so happy for their help, she will no doubt change the Kingsguard rules and allow Arys to keep his white cloak and to marry Arianne. Arys notices that Arianne is shaking. She says she is so scared and needs his protection. If her cousins could be arrested, so could she, and it'll all be for standing up for Myrcella's rights. Arys cannot believe that. She is her father's heir.
Arianne tells him he's wrong. She's been a disappointment to her father since she was born a girl. Dorne wants her brother Quentyn to succeed him, but the laws prevent it. She tells of a letter she saw as a child from Dorne to Quentyn that said that Quentyn will someday rule all of Dorne. She says Quentyn is currently meeting with the Asasi sellsword outfit, the Golden Company. She believes that Quentyn's foster father, Anders Ironwood, is attempting to convince Quentyn that he should rule instead of his sister.
Arianne compares herself to Myrcella in that they share a knight who claims to love them but won't fight for them. Arys says he will fight. Myrcella is the elder and will be the better ruler. No man will steal her birthright while he lives. He is Arianne's in both body and soul. What will she have of him? She wants all of him. He is her true love forever. However, first Myrcella. Yeah. You pointed out before how important the last sentence of chapters is. And I mean, the whole way through this chapter, you're like, maybe Arianne really does love Arys. I mean, she obviously wants something from him, but maybe she really loves him too. Until that last sentence where you're like, oh no, she just wants something from him. This is purely transactional.
And I think, this was a long summary, but I think because of what you just said right there, it was important to hear the nuances of the conversation. Because like you said, for a while you're like, oh, maybe they are in love. But as she keeps trying to find new paths to woo him to her side, you start to realize, oh, she is trying anything to get him on her side with the Myrcella plan, not necessarily on the, us being together forever plan.
I don't think you can completely discount the love, though, because I'm pretty sure Arys is in love with Arianne and will do whatever she says.
It definitely is going in one direction, for sure. I kept thinking of Shae during this chapter, and, it was always debatable, and still to this point you can make a case that Shae may really have loved Tyrion. But if Shae was really just doing what she needed to do to stay on Tyrion's good side so that he could keep her taken care of, Arianne is better at the whole manipulation, seduction thing than Shae was here.
I mean, it helps to have power. I mean, Shae was always powerless.
True, yes.
Apart from her wiles. Arianne really does have some power to wield here, and she's just... the frosting on the cake is her sexuality and sort of twisting him around her finger, but she has actual power behind that.
You're right. It's almost reversed in that she has actual more power than Arys does, whereas
she certainly
Shae
does.
had no power without Tyrion.
Right.
So
right.
Yes, right.
I will say this is it was a great chapter, and it's a great chapter to prove why the books are better than the TV show, because this whole plot line was dumbed down and simplified to the point of being unrecognizable in the TV show. But
Oh,
it's a great thread to the story.
yes, it really is.
It's also great to get minor characters having a chance to shine. I mean, we like our POVs and we get invested in them because we spend a lot of time with them.
Right.
But the Arys Oakhearts of this world, they can help to illuminate sort of like the bigger picture from a different point of view.
Yes,
And
they uncover some light in the shadows of the corners of the rooms and such, if you will.
exactly. There is a mention that it's unseasonably cold down in Dawn, and that the wind is blowing from the north, which presumably is the direction you'd expect a cold wind to blow. But
Right.
sort of symbolism that's interesting that a cold wind is blowing from the north, which is basically the rest of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yes.
So
I had not thought of that until you said that, but yes, that definitely makes some sense. I like it.
and of course, Arys Oakheart himself is from the north compared to Dawn, so maybe
Right.
he himself is the embodiment of that draw.
Yes. But we're seeing how dangerous it's getting here in Sunspear. Speaking of trouble coming from the north, there's also trouble brewing right here in Sunspear. He specifically mentions early on in the chapter, well, he thinks it so that it's mentioning it to us, that a trader as in someone who trades goods, not a traitor,
Yeah.
was killed simply for being from King's Landing. His line is something like he came for dates and found death, something like that. But you just really you see the rage building in the small folk at the street level here versus what we saw with Hotah.
Yeah, to the point where someone as, big and strong and not actually at any particular risk as Arys Oakheart is walking through the city dressed as a Dornishman and
Right.
hiding his face to hide the fact that he isn't Dornish. So
yes, and not
he's
wearing
taking
his
no
white
chances.
cloak.
No white cloak, right?
Yes, so yeah, it's a dangerous scene for sure, but definitely for Myrcella to be in the in the castle that this city surrounds. That's it seemed we've been in Cersei's head a few times in this book, and it seems like she might be oblivious to the dangers that her daughter is in. And the reason that one example that I'm thinking of is that she's allowing Qyburn to experiment with the mountain instead of turning the mountain over to the Martells like they want and trying to make some sort of peace with Dorne.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because on both sides it's awkward because what does she do with the mountain? I mean, he's at death's door. She could try and put him on a boat to Dawn to hand him over, but he might die on the way.
Right.
Certainly, whatever Qyburn's doing is probably not good for the mountain. But
Probably
the
not.
the flip side of it is that the Martells know that Tywin is dead, and they know that the mountain is not going to survive. What do they want now? I mean, what revenge are you looking for other than like a public apology? There's not much left, really.
You mean specifically with the mountain's body, like with the mountain's life?
Well, I meant more with what more do you want than Tywin dead and the mountain probably dead, probably dying in agony.
Right. Well, we know what the Sand Snakes want. We've heard their requests. They range from all-out war on various places like Old Town, which has nothing to do with any of this.
But some of that is to do with Oberyn's death, not so much. I mean,
Yes.
I'm thinking back to the original crime here, which was
Right.
the death of
Yes.
Elia and the children.
Yes. That's the part where the mountain. Although the mountain did kill Oberyn, so I guess he's got some culpability there
Right,
as
but
well.
again, to be fair, that was in a choice of combat,
Yes, it was. I'm not sure anybody in Dorne is paying attention to that detail other than Doran himself, but yes, it's definitely a factor that should be considered.
But what I'm saying is, I'm sort of justifying Cersei's decision in some respects because what more can she do? The culprits in the eyes of the Dornish are dead and dying, respectively.
Yeah, I think they would still probably, I don't know if maybe enjoy would be the right word, but appreciate getting the mountain, at least his body, as quickly as possible. hopefully
But
still
maybe,
some clinging to some level of life.
but maybe Qyburn can do that. Maybe she is thinking about giving the mountain up.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, but thinking about her decisions, I didn't really think about this at the time that Myrcella left King's Landing, but the Oakhearts are from the Reach, and they are very strongly traditional enemies of the Dornish. Makes him a slightly controversial choice for the one to be sent to Dorne. I mean, the tapestries of his home feature his ancestors with their feet up on 100 dead Dornishmen.
Yes,
It's not very subtle.
that is very descriptive. Yeah, it's not very subtle for sure. Yeah, at first glance, it is definitely an interesting choice by Tyrion to send Oakheart to Dorne because
Do, do we know it was Tyrion's choice, not Cersei's?
he thinks it in this chapter when Tyrion
Oh,
offered
he
it.
did, right,
You
yeah.
know,
Yes,
he
yes.
went and lit a candle of thanks and said thanks. But you know, yeah, it's certainly a peculiar choice when you first look at it because of the you know, the bad blood between those from the Reach and Dorne, and Oakheart thinks that Dorne is no fit place for any Oakheart. But you know what?
Yeah.
When you think about it a little more, probably the thinking was that you know, he is one of the more honorable, trustworthy of the Kingsguard that Tyrion had on hand at the time that he could trust Myrcella's safety with.
Slim pickings, I'll say, but keep going.
Exactly. Well, you certainly wouldn't want Boris Blunt. He rolled
No,
over
no,
as
no.
soon as as soon as a challenge was put up with Tommen. But also, he's acting, as we're seeing here, in some ways as a dignitary as well,
Right.
and so it needed to be someone with intelligence and a bit of diplomacy. And again, it becomes a bit slim pickings when you start looking at the available
Mhm.
Kingsguard brothers he had on hand at the time.
Yes. Honestly, it was Arys Oakheart or nobody.
Yeah,
Um,
many Kingsguard would have been a terrible choice for that. So, Mandon
so,
Moore, Preston Greenfield, Boris Blunt, Marin Trent, you
yeah,
wouldn't have won any of those
yeah,
ones.
yeah. So, he Arys lies to us basically because he says he's on his way to this rendezvous to tell Arianne that no more. I'm a member of the Kingsguard. This won't happen. But he's completely lying. He sees one prostitute sort of seductively through a window, and his knees buckle. So, and
it,
he's clearly showered and perfumed for the evening. There's no question where this
yeah,
is
it was
going.
a bit of foreshadowing because before we know what he's on the point of his journey for, he sees the woman in the window or wherever she is, and he thinks that men's bodies were so weak men's bodies betray them, and
Right, right.
then we see exactly why he's thinking that.
He cleverly lumps us all in with him too.
Right.
But I mean, he's not wrong, but he's sharing the guilt here.
Yes.
Uh, and he mentions that Baelor the Blessed fasted to the point of fainting to curb his own lusts. And I'll just say that sort of like that's crazy, and you shouldn't do that kind of thing, I would
Yeah,
say.
and lock his sisters in the maiden vault to prevent those
Right.
lusts from turning into
Mhm.
realities.
I do love that Marcella, I like board games. I love that
I
Marcella and
do.
Tristain are playing Civis. Um, so I've read a bit about Civis. It has elements of chess and strategio, and the old war game Blitzkrieg. To me, it sounds a little bit like the more modern game Aramea. George Martin has been offered the opportunity to create the real game, but he's turned that down because he thinks that a mundane game created for profit wouldn't have the depth and gravitas that he was looking for.
Oh,
It would
yeah,
undermine it if the game existed and it was like, meh.
right. That's cool that he's sticking. He could probably made a few gold dragons off of that.
Yeah, I mean, that poor guy.
I know, right?
He needs every penny he can scrape. Uh,
Exactly.
one other thing, George Martin was very fast and loose with words generally in the books. He didn't invent languages, but Game of Thrones did invent the languages using the occasional word that George Martin put in the books, Vas being one of them.
Okay.
Um, the origin of the words in those languages, so those languages were developed based on what the little bits and pieces that George Martin had put in there. Savas is supposedly therefore derived from the High Valyrian Kaivagon, which was a Game of Thrones word, which was High Valyrian for strategy. So when they were creating the language, they thought about what Savas meant.
Yeah.
Created the High Valyrian word from which it was therefore supposed to be derived, but of course the derivation was actually in the opposite direction,
Right, yeah.
And the meaning of that word was strategy, so they gave the name, which
I like that. Yeah.
The effort that went into creating that language was very high and very worthy.
Yeah, and it's just one of the many examples of why everyone had such high expectations for how Game of Thrones TV show would play out, and why people were so disappointed in how it was kind of wrapped up in a hurry, because so much time and effort was spent on creating this world.
Yeah. So Oakheart compares Myrcella and Trystane as a couple to Robert and Cersei, and I think there's a sort of visual. Myrcella obviously resembles Cersei, and Trystane is darker and larger, and as Robert was. Obviously, he very much hopes that Myrcella has a happier marriage than Cersei does.
Yeah, and she's off to a good start. He tells us of how she's thriving in Sunspear, despite the dangers outside the castle. We don't know if she's aware of them at all. She
likes the food, has fallen in love with her betrothed, and they play board games together. Honestly, it's a recipe for happiness.
Exactly, it's the trifecta. And we'll get into this when it features later in the discussion. But she seems, based on this initial bit we get about her playing Savas, she seems very capable and bright. She's beating the older Trystane in the game pretty regularly, so that's a good sign.
Did you understand that the spread of Savas was quite recent?
It seemed in Dorne. It seemed like yes. It seems like it's.
But it had taken it by it'd taken it by storm. Now that everyone was playing it, apparently.
That was the impression I got as well. Yes. Yeah. And speaking of the comparison between Robert and her mother Cersei, and hoping that Myrcella and Trystane find more happiness together, boy, they could really be a major power couple in Westeros. We've talked a few times about couples that could be major players. The new era of the major players in Westeros, and these two could definitely be such contenders.
Would that require her to be crowned as an alternate queen, or do you think they could just be as the because what is he? I mean, is he third in line to the Dornish princedom?
Yes, you're right. It would require that she be crowned queen. So it could come down to them versus Tommen and Marjorie for the right to rule the realm. Which power couple do you put more faith in?
It's an interesting cage match you've created there, because it seems like in both instances the lady is going to be the power behind that couple, the smarter one.
Right. Yes. Mm-hmm. Which backs up what Arys thinks in this chapter, that the women are really the strong ones.
Yeah.
He includes Cersei in that, and his own mother, and Arianne Martell, and so on and so forth.
Obviously, Oakheart does have some faith in the honor of the Dornish, because if he was concerned about that, he wouldn't have left Myrcella on her own, but unless he was being led around by his manhood, I suppose.
Well, there's always that, yes.
Yes. Suddenly all those logical thoughts you had dissipate immediately in favor of, no, she might be naked. I'm headed that way. He has Lannister men at his disposal, and they're battle hardened, but they're kind of the red-shirted ensigns of
yes, they are.
Song of Ice and Fire. They are there to be cannon fodder. So.
Yes, right. But when all is said and done, there in the room after as we said in the summary, after the passion ends, and the wits return to Arys' mind, he's racked by guilt and shame over the breaking of his oath as a Kingsguard. And I do understand and appreciate his dedication to his vow, but by count, as the two of them discuss in this chapter, he's not even in the vast minority, when it comes to his current existing brothers.
Right, and there are obviously historical examples, known historical examples, and an unknown historical example was thrown in to add to this. So
yes,
yeah,
and he doesn't even know about Jaime. Well, he might know about Jaime and Cersei, but he doesn't even mention Jaime and Cersei, and he doesn't know about Osmond Kettleblack and Cersei. So and he tells us in this chapter about Boris Blunt frequenting brothels and Preston Greenfield and the Draper's wife. So,
and we don't know that Loras has broken his vows, but Loras probably will have a loophole for breaking his vows. It's like, I didn't sleep with a woman.
Well, yeah, I guess you'd have to read the fine print carefully.
I definitely won't have kids. I promise you that.
But Arys. I knew I was going to start calling him Arys instead of Arys.
Yeah.
Arys feels a bit like a throwback to a bygone era of Kingsguard that died out with Sir Lewin Martell, who is mentioned, who is her Arianne's great uncle, and Sir Arthur Dane and Barristan Selmy and Gerald Hightower, and the like of that ilk that wore the white cloak. Now we've got, as we were just saying, Osmond Kettleblack, Boris Blunt, Meryn Trant, Mandon Moore, Preston Greenfield, even Jaime. They seem to bathe themselves in dishonor, or at least not as high a caliber of humans as the previous version.
I like the idea that the great book of the Kingsguard sort of has the pages are all black for these guys.
Yes,
it was a bad time.
Now, having said that, these honorable men that I just mentioned did stand by and watch King Arys murder Starks and rape Queen Rhaella and plot to destroy King's Landing with wildfire.
Yeah, I mean, it's partly a problem of vows generally. Vows, you're supposed to honor your vows, but if your vows lead you into situations where honor suggests you do the opposite, then what are you supposed to do? You're going to dishonor yourself one way or the other. And vows of celibacy are particularly problematic. Like in our world, they've proven problematic.
Right. Yeah.
And it seems that basically you've got two choices. One, you honor them and become deranged, or two, you don't honor them and you then self-flagellate about the fact you're breaking your vows, like Arys is doing.
Yeah. And Arianne makes the argument that it's not our love, you, Arianne and Arys, but the monsters that you've served and the brutes that you call brothers that dishonor you, which just backs up what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she does have a sort of like a sort of legal point as well, that the vow is to not wed or father children. She's like, don't worry, neither of those are happening. So,
right. Yeah, I mean, if there's the means of preventing pregnancy and no plans for marriage, then you can make a case that you're not really breaking your vows. No one said you can't have sex, I guess. I mean,
yeah, it was implied, but not actually stated. Yeah, I wish the world was more like Dawn, honestly. Apart from the heat, I could live without that.
Right. Yeah.
Dawn seem to be. I mean, they're a little bit bloodthirsty for my taste, but sort of like just the gender equality of it seems just to be a positive thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's and it has laws that are a little more reasonable,
Yeah.
The lack of primogeniture is
right,
specifically
exactly.
what I'm referring to.
And well, isn't it the presence of primogeniture? Isn't primogeniture the first child wins? Aren't they exhibiting primogeniture?
Oh,
everyone
okay.
else that doesn't.
Right, we've got it.
I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So they're in that way.
Honoring primogeniture. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and Arianne starts to use slanted truths while playing on Arys's pride and emotions to turn him to her side. She mentions Criston Cole of the Kingsguard did something terrible, and you, as a Kingsguard, can write it. And this goes to, of course, our House of the Dragon content. For those who haven't read all of the backstory, they'll know Criston Cole from House of the Dragon.
Right. And I specifically left that vague there because I already feel gripes about how some of my background bits have spoiled some things in
Spoiled
Dance of the
in
Dragon.
House
So
of the
I thought House of the Dragon. I mean, so I thought I'm not gonna let's steer clear of exactly the specifics that
hmm
is being talked about there. But yeah,
hmm
it's kind of a weak argument for doing something unrelated that happened 100+ years before. Like
Yeah,
I get the
but it's
point she's trying to make, but
she's layering these things on top of each other.
yes, when you're
You're,
dealing with an
you
honorable person with pride in his Kingsguard, he's going to be susceptible to that type of logic.
exactly. She says that you love Myrcella like a daughter, but you're going to let your daughter be passed over for her rightful crown just because she's a female. And it's all of this erodes all of this. I mean, he's in a weakened state anyway because Arianne is naked,
Right.
but these
And
arguments are chipping away at his self-belief for sure.
right, and she adds on then that Marcella is about to be taken to prison by her father at the water gardens, and uh, you know, basically what she's doing in this round here is presenting these fearful outcomes for this Marcella that he loves if he doesn't act the way that Ariane wants him to, despite really she's not provided any facts that the to back up any of her statements. It's just what she's
Except it
suggesting.
did ring true what she said that that Arys believed she was being taken to the water gardens for her protection. And well, Ariane says that is true, but it's not protection from her enemies, it's protection from those who would crown her. That's why it's a prison, because she's not being protected from physical danger. She's being prevented from her rightful position as Queen of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah, uh, I guess it's the use of the word prison that she won't be allowed to leave. I mean, can she leave Sunspear right now if she wanted to? It's not safe outside of the castle either, So
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like she's just kind of making these like she's gonna be stuck there, and it's gonna be like a prison, a nice prison with water fountains and stuff, but still a prison. But really, because we heard the conversation between Doran and Arys, she needs to be kept away from the population in general. So wherever she goes is going to be kind of like a prison for her.
Right. She is definitely not free to go wherever she wants. If she says I'm going back to King's Landing, they're going to say no.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. That she took an oath that Arys took an oath to Joffrey, not to Tommen. Well, that's true, but traditionally Kingsguards have continued to serve. They are not like Blood Riders.
Exactly. Yes. Uh, that she's using a major technicality here. I think it's pretty well understood that the oath transfers from monarch to monarch. He swore an oath to protect the king for life. I don't believe that there's any out clause when there's a transition of power.
Yeah,
Eh,
but I think maybe there should be because I mean it's quite possible that the Kingsguard were derelict in their duty, and that's why the king died. If I, as an incoming king, I would like to be able to say you and you out. You're no good to me.
yes, and
Which
that would
of
make
course Cersei
sense.
did.
Right. And that would make sense, right? I mean, there should also be age limits on the King's
Right,
Guard. I mean,
right,
if someone
and
in a
hand
time of
limits.
peace, a Kingsguard member could be, nearly Maester Aemon's age and still be technically serving, So, uh, but there's a big one that she says is that Myrcella loves Tommen too, and she'll make sure that no harm comes to him regarding, like, if she is crowned and she takes, she becomes the queen, she will make sure no harm comes to Tommen. And we just saw brother fight brother for the Iron Throne, and it ended in one of them dead. So, she can't necessarily make that broad statement that she'll make sure nothing comes of him, nothing
But
bad happens to him.
but there's two things about that make the statement not completely unreasonable. One is there's not much evidence of love between Renly and Stannis.
True.
Here, she's pointing to the evidence of love. Myrcella does love Tommen and would care for him. And also, it's the fact that she's a female. Two brothers would fight to the death for the throne. But Myrcella would, if she was given the choice, if she could choose, she would depose Tommen and, as Arianne says, make him Lord of Storm's End, make him Lord of Casterly Rock, you know?
Yeah, although Stannis did try to do that with Renly, and he wouldn't take it. So
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I mean that's right. But in some ways, no, that's a very good point, because Stannis would have honored that deal if Renly had gone. Yeah, that's all I ever wanted. Here, have my army.
Right.
Stannis wouldn't have murdered him then.
No, yeah, he felt incredible guilt over the fact that him having did what he had done. And we can go back to the Dance of the Dragon. Rhaenyra and Aegon. Rhaenyra felt she had the right to the throne. Aegon felt he had the right to the throne. I won't go into too much detail, but it wasn't the most civil of disputes. I'll say that.
No.
But again, like you said, there wasn't as much love between those two as there seems to be between Myrcella and Tommen. So yes, that is noteworthy.
Right. And I think Myrcella is just a good-natured person, so I definitely think she wouldn't authorize the assassination of her brother just to make her the queen of the
No, I definitely think that's the case. But when things start to really build, sometimes things begin to get out of hand as well.
100%. Absolutely. And maybe the most convincing argument is that Arianne makes to Arys is, I want you to do what you swore to do, which is to protect her and, by extension, her rights. Yes. And if you do that, you'll help us crown her.
Yeah, of course, his oath is not to decide whether she's queen or not. His oath is to protect her. The next part is just kind of what she's wanting out of him. And just a real quick aside, you kind of mentioned it in the character recap, since we didn't really have a previous character to recap, that Arys Oakheart, which was chapter 2 of this book, Arianne says that he will ensure that you and Myrcella never leave the Water Gardens. And Arys thinks about Hotah, and he makes Arys uneasy. And back in that chapter 2, Hotah thought about Arys as well, and he had the sense that one day that they would fight and that Arys would die. So they're both thinking about each other because they're both big, strong protectors. And
I will say, I think that is the most blatant lie Arianne says, that they would never leave the Water Gardens. That's not Doran's plan. Right. They're going to stay in the Water Gardens as long as they need to. It might be years, but they're not. It's not a life sentence.
Yeah.
Basically, once she and Trystane are married, then she would be safe to move around. Or once, I don't know, the Sand Snakes give up on their murderous revenge plans, or once the people who are plotting to crown Myrcella, or maybe Doran convinces Myrcella to say no to the crown. Hey, if you say yes to this, people are going to want you to be the queen. If you say yes to it, you'll plunge the Seven Kingdoms into yet more turmoil. Refuse it.
Yep.
And if Doran could get that from an older, more mature Myrcella, and she's now married to Trystane, then she'd be free to go. She'd be free to do whatever she wanted at that point.
That's one point of view we haven't gotten yet, is how does Myrcella feel about all this? She might have no interest. Who knows?
She probably has no idea. She probably doesn't even occur to her that people are trying to make her the queen.
Right.
Why would it?
I bet that's true.
Yeah.
But I will say, Arianne, she sure changes her tune about her and Arys getting married when it suits her needs.
I did worry about it when she said, "Don't worry about that. We're not getting married." And then she was like, "Wait a second. Let me think about this a bit more carefully. I need to sweeten this pot a little bit more. How
Yeah,
about Kingsguard can get married? How about
right.
a Queensguard can get married? Kingsguard can't."
Right, yes. That's the distinction right there. Yeah. And then she keeps coming up with new angles, and she continues to play on his emotions and love for her and switches tactics yet again, and now she becomes the damsel in distress.
Yes, yes. Her shaking was kind of surprising, and it seemed not true. It seemed more like, although it was unseasonably cold for Dawn, and she wasn't
Yeah.
she wasn't wrapped up.
Yes.
She genuinely seems to fear imprisonment by her father, which is strange. And I wonder how much of this whole story about Quentin being Doran's choice for his heir is true. Because some of what she says has the ring of truth to it, seeing this letter as a child. And
Right.
assuming what she's reporting about Quentin is true, that he is talking to the Golden Company and he's being built up by his foster father, Lord Ironwood. Assuming all of that is true, then yeah, it does seem that there is some truth to what she's saying. But the whole her seeing that letter as a child, just that seems fictional to me. That seems made up.
It's tough to know because we are not so close to the forest that we can see the trees, unlike uh, Arys here, and we could see that she is attempting to manipulate him. So it's hard to take anything that she says as truth because she keeps switching tactics and she's contradicting herself and she's changing her opinion on things. So yeah, it is really hard to tell whether she's being truthful about that. But as far as her fearing her father's imprisonment or imprisonment by her father, I should say, we don't know Doran that well. We basically just met him during Hotah's chapter,
Yeah.
but he doesn't seem like a cruel man. I could see him confining her like he's doing with her cousins if word got out of this scheme that she's working on. But
Right. Or perhaps confining her the way he's planning to confine Myrcella.
yes, I just can't imagine any sort of harsh treatment being handed down.
Yes,
Um,
that doesn't sound like Doran, that's for sure.
And Arianne disputes the confinement for treason of her youngest cousins, Dorea and Loreza, saying that they were 8 and 6, respectively, and that they could not be up to any treason. They're too young. But we were there when Doran was trying to decide what to do about those two, and he decided to confine them with their older sisters to prevent someone from using them as a means to get to him to persuade him to do what they want. So
Yeah.
it's unclear whether Arianne knows that, or again, is she simply slanting facts to suit her argument?
Yeah. But of course, if there is a grain of truth to this, if for some reason, I mean, again, coming back to the issues of primogeniture, Ariane should be the next in line. She's the eldest.
Right.
So Quentin should not be in the picture. So why would Doran go against tradition? What does he see in Quentin? I think I think it's not true. I think she's making all that up, but she's using Quentin's behavior in terms of meeting the Golden Company as a pretense for a sense that her position is vulnerable and she needs Arys on her side.
Right. Yeah. If the letter exists, it's definitely an odd bit of a smoking gun. But
Right.
possibly it meant something. If something happens
It,
to your sister before she has an
right.
heir, that you'll be the next in line. Because
Yeah. Yeah.
Doran just seems like a very calm, calculating, patient person. And if he is choosing to pass Ariane over for Quentin, that choice came with a lot of deliberation and very deliberate thought.
And was made when she was a child. What had she done? Did she just refuse
Right.
to go to bed or something? I mean, like, it seems whatever crime a child could have committed, this punishment is enormous.
Yes, yes, it would be. You're right. She was a child. So what could possibly have happened, that would
Right.
have caused him to have that thought? And Arianne considers Doran weak because he sits and does nothing, and he lacks the courage to act in defiance against the crown. And personally, I think she's wrong on both parts there. I think that young people often confuse weakness with restraint and strength with action. And
Yeah.
as you get older, you realize that often showing restraint takes much more strength than jumping to action and giving in to base impulses. And I don't think he's a coward at all, but possibly, here's an idea. Possibly he has his own plan that he is in the process of developing. And because this is a culture that's quick to anger and slow, deliberate actions might feel like cowardice, people are like, you're not doing anything. You're just sitting on your hands. But, he could be like a duck, calm and still above the water, but his feet churning like crazy under it.
Yeah.
So,
We certainly got that impression from the Hota chapter, that there's a lot more going on beneath that placid surface than we
yes.
thought.
Here's the thought. Maybe Quentin is meeting with the Gold Cloaks to hire them to help Dorne rebel against the crown.
Right. Right. But if that was true, why wouldn't Doran let the opposing forces do what they want to do, which is crown Myrcella? Unless it's just a matter of timing. He wants to do it, but he wants to do it on his own time.
Yeah, maybe he just wants to keep everything hush hush until
Yeah.
it's time, possibly.
Yeah. So tell me more about why it's important that the Golden Company is breaking its agreement with Mia, and what it means that that happened around the time they met with Quentin.
Well, it's important. The fact that they're breaking their agreement with Mir is important because that's their whole thing. Our word is as good as gold. And she tells Arys that saying dates back to Bittersteel. Now, as a reminder of who Bittersteel is, that's his real name was Aegor Rivers, and he was one of Aegon the Fourth's great bastards. And that after the first Blackfire Rebellion, he actually founded the Golden Company. And it's said that they've never broken a contract. So that's why it's a big deal. They're breaking this contract with Mir. And so Arianne thinks that Quentin is making an agreement for the Gold Cloaks to aid him in displacing her.
The Golden Company.
Yes. Did I say the Gold Cloaks?
Mm-hmm.
I was afraid I was going to say the Gold Cloaks. I think if you take all these things, the fact that they've never broken a contract before, Quentin is meeting with them, coupled with at least what we're being told is this letter from her father, as well as the fact that her father's health is failing. All these things are coming together. And if she's being honest with us about all this, I think that's where her fear that she's being passed over comes from.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. But her final touch of her manipulation is the masterstroke, of course, because she compares herself to Myrcella. She's basically weighed up Arys's motivations and desires, and she said she and Myrcella are the same. They're both princesses who share a knight who claims to love them both, but he won't fight for either of them. And that's gonna do it, basically. I think you can safely say Arys is sold at this point.
For a man who took the white and so clearly values his ability to protect, making him feel impotent and useless is going to a high probability evoke the desired response, especially when you're one of the ones that is claiming to love you and you love her. And it's not like he's unable, but he's unwilling to defend his vulnerable loves, these innocent women. And of course, he completely falls for it.
Yeah.
And
as most of us would.
Yeah, she's already promised him the possibility of having it all, her as a wife and keeping the white cloak. And then she dangles her endless love one more time. You are my forever love. I will be together forever. After just one thing.
One last thing.
Yes.
Let's get Myrcella crowned first.
Right. Then we'll be together forever.
All right, let's do some spoilers. Remember, you can join some of the upper tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer levels, and you could listen to the spoiler section. Well, thanks for that. Do you have some background for us?
I do, I do. So Arianne and Arys discuss Kingsguard brothers who were known to have had mistresses. They speak like they know the details of the men and their mistresses, but we don't. So I'm going to expound a bit on one of them. We'll get to Sir Lucamore the Lusty in a future chapter when he comes up again. But today, let's just take a look at Sir Terence Toyne. He's mentioned as having been caught in bed with the king's mistress. Arys says that it caused the death of both of them, as well as the noblest knight who ever lived, and caused the downfall of House Toyne. Well, back in Sansa 2 of Storm of Swords, I talked about how King Aegon IV had Sir Terence Toyne dismembered piece by piece, while the king's mistress, Bethany Bracken, was forced to watch. Aegon then had her killed as well. Terence's brothers attempted to seek revenge by killing the king. However, here's where the noblest knight who ever lived enters. The king was protected by his brother, Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, said noblest knight, who unfortunately died in the fight. The brothers were killed for their treason, and it's believed that these deaths led to the downfall of House Toyne. Now, speaking of Prince Aemon, the noblest knight, Arianne says that he took his queen to bed and got her pregnant. Arys counters with that having been a lie told by the king to set his true-born heir to the side for his bastard son. They're speaking of Aemon and his sister Nerys, who were in love, but she was married off to their older brother Aegon, who became King Aegon IV, aka Aegon the Unworthy. The king began to insinuate that his first son Daeron with the queen was not actually his, but Aemon's. And rumors spread that the king planned to disinherit Daeron for his oldest bastard, Daemon. Well, it never happened, and Daeron became King Daeron the Good, and Daemon became Daemon Blackfyre when his father legitimized his bastards on his deathbed, causing much turmoil for generations. One of those bastards being Aegor Rivers, aka Bittersteel, who was just referenced a little bit ago.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks. That's good background. Comparison with the television show, this is entirely dropped. Arys Oakheart did accompany Myrcella on her long voyage to Dawn, but then inexplicably comes home. And that's next he's seen, he's back in King's Landing, and it's never really explained in the show.
Huh. Yeah, that's...
She's left to her own devices.
Right, what's with that?
Yeah, it's a tip of an iceberg of differences that lends up with Jaime coming to Dawn to look after her. And the show's attachment to the books, it just becomes more and more tenuous all the time.
Yes, yeah.
Pedantry, it's been a thin section for pedantry. The editors must have really amped up their game. But,
yeah, either that or there's so much being packed into these longer chapters these days that there's just too much content to consider.
News and notes.
So we've got a premiere time frame for the Game of Thrones prequel, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, The Hedge Knight. HBO has announced that the show will run in 2025 and that production is already underway. As we all know, the show follows the lives and adventures of Dunk and Egg as they wander Westeros, getting into all sorts of hijinks.
Nice. We couldn't find any new reviews this week. So if you want to get a shout out of an episode, you just want to help spread the word, please go and give us a 5-star rating review anywhere and everywhere. But if you could particularly do it on Apple Podcasts, I told you we mention them every week, and we'll be sure to read it out and give you the thanks you deserve. Let's conclude this one then. The forces that opposed Oren Martell's passivity are beginning to make their moves. It's sort of tragic for Arys Oakheart that he's clearly a man of honor, but he is falling in love and can no longer make rational decisions.
Yeah, about Doran, like I said, all Doran seems to think he's a coward for not reacting immediately to Oberyn's death. But patience and waiting for the right time, for the right response, are virtues. So
yes. But of course, another virtue is good PR. Explain to the people what you're doing, and you might find you have less trouble.
He could use some consultations with our PR firm. Sure.
Exactly.
I see that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But about Arys, it certainly feels like he's being played here.
Yes, for sure.
So,
but maybe he'll have a happy life with Arianne. It would be nice.
Yes, if she's willing to go through with the second half of the plan, once the first half is taken care of, it's just hard to tell whether she's actually interested in him in that way or not.
But it's not hard to guess. It's hard to tell. It's not hard to guess.
Right. It does appear that Arys is going to back Arianne and her plan to crown Myrcella, though.
I think so. It does seem that way.
But, like we talked about it a little bit. How will Myrcella feel about such a plan when someone tries to put a crown on her head? Will she be like, whoa, what are you doing? I don't want that crown. My brother is the king. Or will she be like, you know what? I want this crown. I want to be queen of the Seven Kingdoms. She is Cersei's daughter. She could have that innate desire to rule.
But I'll say she's too young to understand the implications of it. If they tell her, because Joffrey died, you're the queen of the Seven Kingdoms, it passes to you, she'd be like, really? Okay.
Yes, you're right. That could be.
She probably wouldn't think about the danger it creates for Tommen, or perhaps the rift it's going to cause in her family. She just wouldn't see it, I don't think. She's just too young to realize.
Yeah, and if they spin it the right way, she won't even notice it's happening until it's too far down the path.
And also, you could add in, and if you become the queen, then we'll definitely marry you to Trystane. This is, it's up in the air at the moment, but this is the final step for you to marry Trystane.
Yes, use the same tactic that Arianne used on Arys.
Exactly.
Do you want to marry the person you love? Well, guess what?
but this one you follow through on, at least. This one is for real.
Right.
I'll just say again, vows of celibacy are a universally bad idea. Voluntary celibacy, fine. But don't tie it to your honor, because you'll either dishonor yourself or you'll go crazy trying to keep the vow.
Yeah.
And I do worry for Myrcella. I mean, I do think that there is truth to the plan of the Ariannes of this world to crown her. But the other route to what they want is to kill her.
Yes, I was thinking that. Yes, there's two paths you could take. Kill her or crown her. Right.
Yeah, they both lead to the same result, which is Dorne getting up and at 'em with the rest of the Seven Kingdoms. But if you protect her and take her to the Water Gardens and keep her closeted away from everyone else, murder becomes the easier option.
Yes, you're right.
Easier to kill someone than to arrange to have them made Queen of the Seven Kingdoms.
Right. And if you remember from Hotah's chapter, there were 3 different plans that the Sand Snakes each brought to Doran. And, one of them was to kill Myrcella, and the other was to crown Myrcella. And Arianne tells us in this chapter that she and Tyene are as close as sisters. They're of an age. And Tyene was the one that also had the plan to crown Myrcella and then kill the Lannister forces as they try to come down into Dorne. Mm-hmm. And so it's very possible that these two have been hashing this plan out together.
Yeah, very much. Well, next time we catch up with Brienne. She has herself a new riding partner, right? That'll be fun.
Yes, she does. Yes, it should be. Two very loquacious, talkative folks. How are they going to find a word in edgewise between the two of them?
I do love the odd couples, so this will be a good one.
Yeah.
There's 4 ways that you could help us. You could leave us a positive review. You could buy merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. There you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest, and the upper tiers get you the spoiler section, which is always fascinating. I mean, especially for me, who doesn't remember what's coming. Because it's like, they're genuinely spoilers. I sometimes want to cover my ears as Mackelly's talking.
I do sometimes feel bad when I'm divulging things.
Yeah. Especially because during the conversation I've asked the question and I don't know the answer to it, and up it comes in spoilers, and I'm like, dang it!
Right.
Or if you also want to make a donation to us, you can do so at our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, I suggest you check us out on our social medias. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal, or on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.